Christmas. Christmas has always been my favorite time of the year. As a child, it had nothing to do with piles of gifts to be received, as there were few gifts. It was the excitement, the feeling, the wonderful smells of sawdust, cedar trees, and hot chocolate that made it special. Soon after Thanksgiving, Christmas wasn't even thought of until after Thanksgiving. The excitement began at our one room, one teacher school. During our twice weekly music periods, we began singing Christmas carols. Our teacher, never the same one as the year before, I had 7 different teachers in my 8 years. Almost all of them began each morning in the same way. Following the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, our teacher would read to us for 20 minutes. This is where I first heard Little Women and the Call of the Wild. Now it was December and time for one of our favorites, the Christmas Carol. We just loved hating Scrooge and loving Tiny Tim. It was also time to plan a program for our parents. Someone was chosen to recite the night before Christmas, and play parts were given out and practice began. One thing I enjoy almost as much as the singing and reciting was the making of gifts for our parents. The wood and coping saws and sandpaper appeared as if by magic. Patterns was traced onto wood pieces, and the older boys and girls were chosen to saw out the shapes that turned into tie racks, whatnot shelves, bookends, and so forth. I can still see clearly the sewing board I made one year for my mother. It was about a foot square with a strip of cork board across the top for pins and needles, and a narrow shelf at the bottom with nicely spaced nails to hold spools of thread and a thimble or two. It also had hooks at each corner to hang scissors upon. I wish I'd have got that. Classes were shortened, and every spare minute was spent sanding, nailing, and painting. The younger children made picture cards with their handprints on them, and wooden spools and potatoes that were carved and used for printing ink designs on brown wrapping paper, from which you could make many things, including covers for your daddy's old farmer's almanac or your mother's Bible. Names were written on slips of paper, put into someone's hat, and drawn out for the gift exchange. Even the FBI could not force us to tell whose name we'd picked. Of course, a best friend could find out, unless you were lucky enough to have drawn their name. And if you didn't tell your best friend, they figured it out with lots of pretending guessing that they were the lucky person. Practice for the program began in earnest 2 weeks before the last Friday before Christmas. There would be community meeting Friday, and all our parents would come to see and hear us. Costumes were put together from old robes, towels, and bits of sheets and blankets. Crowns and angel wings were fashioned from cardboard and trimmed with tinsel rope. The 6 tall windows decorated in colored pictures made by the younger children, or some years by amateur paintings by me. I think I was only so privileged on my 7th and 8th year. It was a very prideful thing. A large cedar tree was brought to the school by one of the men in the neighborhood, and much fun was had making red and green and white paper chains, popcorn ropes, miniature Santas and angels, and for the tip top, of course, a bright, shiny cardboard star covered with gold paper and trimmed with more tinsel. The school sat way up front, away from the big old round coal stove used to keep us reasonably warm, and also used to dry our shoes and socks, our scarves and mittens after a long walk to school or a game of fox and geese at noon or recess. It also was a place our teacher heated the cocoa made each day to warm our bodies and our spirits. After what seemed like forever, the big day arrived. Chores on the farm were finished early so children and parents could be at the schoolhouse by 8 o'clock. The dads had the scary, well, to us kids it was scary, job of pumping up and lighting the big shiny gasoline lanterns that hung from large hooks from the ceiling. They sent a warm glow over the room and made it seem a little warmer. Our parents found a place to sit, some squeezing into small seats, usually filled with squirming little bodies and not made to fit adult sizes and shapes. We children hid behind the sheet strung on wires across the front of the building to form a stage, where whispers and giggling and wiggling usually drew a reprimand from our exhausted teacher, and then it all began. All the day of practice paid off. The program started with the smallest children standing behind a manger with someone's favorite doll to represent the Christ child and sing Away in a Manger, and the rest joined in with Silent Night, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and my favorite, It Came Upon the Midnight Clear. I just loved where the angels were bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. The carols were followed with Up on the Housetop and Jolly Old St. Nicholas. The pieces were recited, the songs all sang. The play ended and we had our gift exchange. My first grade Christmas, a big 8th grade boy, Ted Blackburn, I still remember his name because I had a crush on him for years, gave me a box of paper dolls with 4 crayons. It was the start of a collection before it ended, numbered 700, and was from Shirley Temple, the Dio and Quinn triplets, to Tilly the Toiler, cut from the Sunday Wichita Beacon. I wish I'd kept them. The gifts might be a box of crayons, a color book, or some pretty hair ribbon for the girls, a spinning top, a yo-yo, or a pocket knife for boys. Cost not to exceed 25 cents. Some gifts were homemade. Nowadays they would be called a craft project, but we didn't care. They were wonderful in our eyes. Our parents oohed and awed over our labors of love. We ate cookies and drank cocoa and walked home in the cold winter night, and once snuggled into our warm beds thought surely it did not get any better than this.